Good evening and welcome to the Monday, December 9, 2013 Board of Education meeting. First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is to take action on 4 different sets of minutes, the November 12 regular meeting, the November 18 special meeting regarding an expulsion, September 9th joint Board of Ed, Board of Finance, and Standing Building Committee meeting, and the November 25th workshop. Is there a motion relating to those minutes? Second?
Second.
Okay, are there changes, corrections, additions?
I have an addition I'd like to suggest. Under the minutes of the November 12th board meeting, item 11.5, which is on page number 5 under 3.1 of the packet, where we discuss the GEA contract, I'd like to suggest that we also describe it a little bit. We have a lot of description of things like what the Interact Club does and, what's going on in the schools from the student reps reports, but just a few really brief lines about the contract.
I think we probably did that at the meeting. I certainly think it could be.
I can reiterate the summary, yes. I can provide this.
Anything else? Okay, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Extensions? All right. Dr. Moore, next item on the agenda is to review the expenditures for the month of November, and we did look at it in the Finance Committee in some detail.
Yeah, so we discussed this at the Operations Subcommittee.
Yes.
Now we've combined facilities and finance into one committee with a longer meeting. So thank you again to Linda Trudeau for preparing this. I'm essentially coming off first summary, but the expenditures for the month of November were $5,087,200.26, which represented 33.27% of the budget as compared to 33.15% in the prior year. So that's very comparable to where we've been. The salary line item was a little bit higher because there were 3 payroll dates in November. And there were some expenditures on supplies, material, and capital that were a little bit higher, but that tends to happen just depending on where those purchases lie. We went over a few of the larger expenditures. There was an expense to relocate the ropes course as part of the GHS construction, and that will be reimbursed through the GHS construction budget. We also had some technology purchases as well as furniture for Adams. But really, the budget or the finances are very much in line with where they've been, and not a lot off from last year. Any questions I'm happy to take.
Then is that a motion to approve the expenditures?
That is a motion.
All right. Is there a second?
Yes.
Second. Any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. Yes.
Recused.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Myers is recused on that. Item 5 on the agenda is public forum for topics on the board agenda. Anybody wish to be heard? All right. Item 6, communications. I think we've all received communications regarding full-day kindergarten, and that's something I think we've said that we are going to discuss in detail as part of the budget process, which is going to start in earnest fairly soon. I think there is a meeting next Monday with the Board of Finance, between the Operations Committee of the Board of Education and the Board of Finance Subcommittee on Education. So that is really it'll be our second chance to work with them on some potential issues and numbers. But then what's the rest of the timeline, Dr. Freeman, on what's the next step in terms of the budget preparation?
We will be presenting after the holidays. We'll be presenting the administrative draft budget to the Board of Education. We then have 2 public hearings scheduled where the community has the opportunity. They have commented on the front end of this process. They'll now be able to comment having seen a draft of that budget. And then board deliberations will begin in earnest until this board adopts their finalized budget. Do you have the dates for those meetings, Linda? I don't have the dates in front of me.
They're January 27th in the Adams Chorus Room, and January 28th, 7:30, both of them, Monday and Tuesday, the Adams Chorus Room.
Thank you very much.
That's from our own agenda. I don't have it memorized.
And in the regular January meeting prior to that, we will have a budget presentation where the administrative draft budget will be complete, and we will present that to this board at that time.
And I think we understand there is a petition working its way around with the all-day kindergarten. That's great. Happy to get input from anybody on anything that's a matter of budgetary concern. Any other communications people have received?
I've forwarded these to Dr. Freeman and Mr. Bloss. I received a set of communications from both current and former Guilford students regarding the availability of taking algebra in the 7th grade. And at this time, Dr. Freeman is arranging some discussions with those students to explain the administration's position on this. But I just wanted to mention that that had come in.
Mrs. Tokarska, the math department head from the high school, and I will be meeting with the students, listening to their concerns and hopefully addressing those concerns. And we are excited that the students are involved in their schooling and in the decisions being made. These are high school students who won't be affected, and they are still interested in what's happening, and I am welcoming of their involvement in the process.
Okay. Other communications?
The other one I got was, I brought up at the operations committee, but it was questioning the plywood on some of the windows at Cox, which apparently has been there since August, but is basically boarding up windows that are scheduled to be replaced as part of the Cox project, but they didn't want to invest money in repairing them before that project went into place. So that was discussed at the operations committee, but that was the other communication I had.
All right. The intent obviously is to get all of those replaced in due course, as soon as practicable.
Much less plywood than it was, but there's still a little bit of board left, yes.
Unless you're in that room.
I know.
The plywood, and it's the same amount of plywood as it's always been, but, yes. All right. Okay. Any other communications? All right, student representatives, what would you like to tell us?
Here at Guilford High School, the winter sports are starting up. We had a very successful fall with the sports. The girls soccer team won the state championship. I'm sure you guys are all aware of that.
Yay.
Almost Maine, the play, was very successful. And also this past weekend, there was a Christmas concert, tree lighting concert at the First Congregational Church where symphony orchestra and chorus performed for 4 concerts for the community. That was very successful. We're ahead of schedule for the construction, we were informed, so yay. Seniors are came back from colleges, so they're finding out about what their future is going to be like. And the food drive was very successful, which was part of the club Action Against Hunger. And we actually had 9 truckloads that was sent off of canned foods and everything for the community. And then I spoke with Mr. Augustine from Cox, and he wanted to let me know that there's a Cox television that they're starting to air in school where they broadcast in their lab, and it's like morning news, and they said it takes place in Washington, D.C. thanks to green screening. Also, there's plans for additional work programs like the Book Nook or Up Close and maybe a math show. They wanted me to tell you guys, don't worry, there are no plans for a reality TV show. Also, last Friday, a storyteller came and visited and talked about the African American history and stories about that. And they're looking forward to the visits from Voices and Adams Middle School Band next week.
At Guilford Lakes, there's a new idea this year that each class will get to invite guests in to celebrate the efforts of the students at least twice this year. So in November, one of the first times this happened was for grade 4 students who invited guests to share their memoirs, and second grade students shared their personal narratives with their guests. The PTO sponsored a book fair in the first week of December, and the 4th graders just had their student council elections. And at Melissa Jones School, the student council organized a food drive and collected hundreds of items from each class as a donation to the Guilford Food Bank. The staff is also sponsoring One Needy Family this holiday season, providing everything, including clothes, toys, and a food basket. The Fill the Bucket campaign is going on there as well as at Guilford Lakes. It's essentially a program based on optimism and positive interactions. The Guilford Fund for Education grant funded Fill the Bucket training, which was a full day of student assemblies and staff training. There was also a Native American dance company that came to perform right before the Thanksgiving holiday as kind of a cultural arts event, and they taught about dances and what they mean. This group performed at the 2008 presidential election, so that was pretty exciting, and it was funded by the PTO. And finally, the students learned about sheep herding with hands-on demonstrations and experience at Dragonfly Farm in North Guilford. And third graders also spent a day at Bushy Hill Camp learning about how early inhabitants of Connecticut dealt with the climate here.
That's it? Terrific.
Yep.
Thank you.
Questions, anybody? Questions, comments? Anybody have any? So everybody's hearing back from colleges now? Is that where?
The early rounds are hearing back. Then the deadline for regular decision is usually around January 1st, and those will all hear back in late March.
So far, so good?
Not many people have heard back yet, but yeah.
Well, keep us up to date.
Okay.
We always like to know where people are headed. Good, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Dr. Freeman, your report, I guess we've already talked about 8.2 a little bit, the budget process, although you may want to talk.
No, I was going to say we actually did preempt 8.2. I just wanted to add that at this point, we have completed our first round of meetings with all building principals and with all department heads. So first draft budgets have been collected from all departments. We are in the process of compiling those. Mr. Bowden, Mrs. Trudeau, and I will be working on compiling that first draft and bringing that forward for all of you. And as I said, as was noted, I was going to share that there is a significant amount of community interest early in the budget season this year. There was a story in the Register. We had parents coming out. There's quite a bit of conversation, and most of it tends to be particularly around full day K. But there is a lot of interest around the budget season this year. The only other update that I wanted to share is that we continue to work on supports for high-achieving learners. I think I have previously updated the board that we have received a proposal from DMC, the District Management Council. Since we last spoke, Dr. Jean Gubbins from UConn came and spent a day in Guilford schools with us. We had her visit classes with us at Baldwin, at Jones, and at Adams. We spent the afternoon debriefing that visit, and since that time we have also received a proposal from UConn led by Dr. Gubbins, but including Dr. Renzulli, who would be part of the study and who has been named as one of the reviewers in the UConn proposal. Tomorrow morning, I have a conference phone call with representatives from Teachers College and Columbia University to solicit a proposal from them, and we're still working on securing two last phone conferences, invitations really, one with folks at William & Mary who came very strongly recommended from Dr. Gubbins, and one with Western Connecticut State University. The goal would be to, by the holiday break, have real proposals or at least suggestions from these 5 entities, at which time we do intend to bring in a mixed group, sort of a representative sounding board, shake out some of those early proposals, and then come back to this board with a real recommendation for how to move forward with that study, the idea of that outside look. I would only note that additionally, the other work that we have initiated this year continues. We're using the new forms, we're using the new procedures, and we're focusing on the curricular and instructional work as we spoke. I don't mean to speak for Dr. Keene or for Mr. Bowden, but I think the visit with Jean Gubbins was actually exciting. We sort of targeted certain areas that we wanted her to be without telling her why. And I think being in those areas, looking at what was happening, and then being able to debrief some of the work that's going on, I think we came away feeling positive about the work that's going on in this area. And that's really the only update, and would complete my report this evening unless you have questions for me.
Okay, thoughts, questions? You should just, you used Dr. Renzulli's name like But he is a major national figure in this area, and I think it's probably worth maybe talking a little bit about the UConn program.
Sure. The NEAG School of Education at UConn is overall a very solid program. It's got particular recognitions in a couple areas. It has the #1 kinesiology program in the whole country. It also draws national recognition, if not international recognition, for a group of educators who really focus on talented and gifted students or simply high-achieving students. Joe Renzulli is widely published and widely regarded as an expert in the area of talented, gifted education. He did come and do work in Guilford prior to my arrival. It was some years ago that Dr. Renzulli came and worked with our teachers here in school. When UConn first expressed an interest in working with us, I knew that we would be working with people who had worked with Dr. Renzulli. I was pleasantly surprised to see that he was named on the actual proposal and would be one of the reviewers involved. Without exaggeration, he's written the book or more than one book in this area. So yes, very well respected, very well grounded, worked well with us in the past, and we would be excited to entertain the idea of possibly doing work with Dr. Renzulli again.
Okay, questions? Yes.
Just about process. We talked about this. I understand with this particular area, it's not maybe comparable to some of the other areas in terms of the availability of consultants, but I mean, one way to do it is what appears what the administration is doing is going out and seeing what people can offer. Yep. The other way to do it is to ask or put together what we want and then see who can offer that. I guess we'll get these proposals, but is there the opportunity to then sort of look at them and put out our own proposal in terms of what we would want and have a bid on that, or would it just come down to picking the one that?
Oh, no. I'm not suggesting that at any point we say these are 5 and we have to find one we like out of this pool. I have made it very clear to all the folks with whom we've spoken that I'd like to see a proposal, and in fact, in the conversations have made it clear that to a degree, we're not sure that we know what we don't know. I think when we had the community conversation the end of last school year, it became clear that to a degree, we've done some things and we've done them really well, but I think there's more that we could be doing. So I hesitate to say really clearly, I know what I want, or we know what we want, and please come in and tell us what. So we have said to please come in, give us a suggestion for how you could do that. They know that we're courting multiple organizations and that we may say we like a lot of what this group did, but they're missing this. And we'll go back to A or B and say, we like your proposal, but can you give us this? Because the other group hasn't fit that in yet. Or simply come up with a really good call for bid and put a request for proposal out. I think realistically what will happen is we will go back to 1 or 2 people and say, we like what you presented, but we have some notes for you. And if we're going to do business with you, we'd like to build on your structure, but we'd like you to do a few things a little bit differently. Particularly, and I was impressed with Dr. Gubbins' willingness to come in and say, I can't even write an informed proposal for you without getting to know you better. And so she came and she spent...
Yeah, it makes sense to go a little bit, for them to find out something about us before they say what they can do and vice versa. But
Yep.
I guess, and I said this before, but I just do think that the earlier you get interested people, whether it be from the board or the administration or the district or community members involved, the greater buy-in there will be to the process. I mean, we're already along in the process in terms of getting these proposals. Personally, I'd love to see what those proposals are, if you're willing to share them, that sort of thing. And maybe we want to wait till we get them all back and look at them. But I just think that the earlier we get interested parties involved, the greater the degree of buy-in is going to be to the results. So.
Thank you.
Okay, and so this is going to be ready either out of this year's budget or next year's budget, I take it?
Yes, or a combination of both. Yes, as we're moving forward and looking at next year's budget, we're keeping aware of this, but we're also not waiting to begin to July 1. we've already looked at where we could find some funds to begin this work this year.
If I may, I would like to actually thank you for how much time and energy has gone into this already. I mean, I do think we're in a year with evaluations and Common Core state standards, and the to-do list already appears quite long. The number of people you've already talked to, and I mean, it feels like this is moving forward with a great deal of commitment, and I just wanted to say that I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
I think it's an important issue, and certainly we've heard from a number of parents who think this is an important issue, and it's nice to see how quickly we're moving forward.
Thank you very much.
I agree.
I would like to suggest that based on the experience we had with the special ed evaluation, Sue Renner and Keith and I were involved in looking over the proposals. And I think it would be a good idea, following up with what Chris said, is to have one or more of the board involved and meet with you as you review that.
This sounding board group that I spoke of, what I'm thinking of is to have some administrative representation, some teacher representation, board representation, and draw from the group of parents who have expressed a real commitment to this process as well. So that we've got sort of a mixed group of people and different constituencies represented. And calling it a sounding board, I'm not thinking of it as a formal committee or structure, but I think there's a lot of value in having different sets of eyes and not simply a number of proposals and we bring it here and maybe it gets looked at more for cost or efficiency. I want some of the people who are at the ground level involved in looking at those as well. And that's been suggested, and I think it is a great suggestion that I am committed to doing.
Good. Thanks.
Okay, so that's it for your report?
That's it for my report.
Sounds like you made a good call on the freezing rain this morning.
I did get the 5:15 a.m. phone call.
Yeah, now that we could lose.
I was
Not for nothing, but I don't know, I mean, waking somebody up at 5 o'clock to say it's okay to go back to sleep, maybe not the approach we want to take as a district.
There are some staff members who come from a long distance who really appreciate the 5:15. I could look to see if we could.
I was just going to say, can some of us buy out of that?
I thought somebody had died or something.
Exactly.
I was like, who would call at this hour?
I was feeling very good about a decisive call this morning.
Fine, so if the staff wants in, great. If the parent wants to opt in, I think that's great too, but my guess is
I
the
should
majority.
probably take this opportunity to warn folks that there might be another call tomorrow.
Well, I did appreciate, however, because last year I often got 2 calls, which was explained as being a parent and a board member. So at 5:11, I then looked at the clock and said, any minute now. Phone was going to ring again, but it didn't. It only came once.
We'll talk about that some later time, I'm sure. All right, board agenda. 9.1 is received for possible action the Guilford Council of Educational Administrators proposed contract. This is the administrators union, and this is specifically relating to a proposed new agreement to run from September 1st, 2014 for an almost a 3-year period, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But I do want to just thank first of all the members of the Board of Education who participated in the bargaining committee. Although bargaining, it sounds like, I hate that term, but this was followed on the same process of a very open, collaborative, not the traditional proposal, counter-proposal, offer, demand, et cetera. This was all a very open process and a very fair process, and one that I think renewed my belief that the relationship between I hope the relationship between the board and the administrators is one of the key relationships in the district, and why some districts want to follow a model that treats everybody as adversaries, I don't get, but that's not the path that we're trying to do here, and I think that ultimately we've come to a proposal, a tentative agreement that reflects both the value that we place the administrators, with the administrators, on the other hand, recognizing some of the issues that we face as a community in terms of economics and the economy as a whole. So the proposal that has been ratified by the administrators and the bargaining committee of the Board of Education unanimously believes is a fair one and recommends approval of the whole board is that in terms of salary, a 2.2% increase in the first year, 2.3% in the second year, and 2.4% in the third year, with a caveat on the third year, and that is our contracts right now run from September 1 through August 30. That is not our fiscal year, however. Our fiscal year is July 1 to June 30th. It really doesn't make a lot of sense in the abstract to have contracts running outside the fiscal year, particularly when they're 80% or more of your entire budget. So the administrators have agreed that that third year is going to end actually on June 30th of 2000, whatever the year is, 17. June 30th of 2017. So in the third year, the increases...
It's actually the first year that we're going to compress.
Oh, is it the first year? Okay.
The first year will run only for 10 months.
All right. Then
Yep.
the first year is going to be for 10 months, and then, so the 2.2% increase in the first year actually is going to be slightly reduced by 2/12, 1/6. So, and we'll work those numbers out, and we're going to do it as part of a side agreement, but on an annualized basis, the number that I gave you before, or what the numbers are going to be. So the total of that, if I can do it in my mind very quickly, is 6.9%, but it's actually going to be a little bit less than that because the first year, the 2.2% is going to actually be reduced by 1/6, but then the contract is going to end a little earlier than it would otherwise. There are going to be some changes with co-pays and premium cost share. The premium cost share for the health benefits will go up to 20% by the end of the contract. The contract will provide all administrators with one personal day. There are going to be, the athletic director is going to have an extra 5 days, up to an extra 5 days per year for a total of up to 10 to do duties really most likely during the summer as much as anything else, getting the schedule put together for the fall. And there is a slight change in terms of vacation cash out for a non-retirement, non-disability, somebody who leaves the district not for retirement and not for disability, the vacation cash out is going to be calculated in a slightly different way and it's not a big number, but a number that would be a benefit to the district, and the administrators, I think, were very thoughtful about that and understood really what we were, what our issues were and what our goals were. So I thought the process, again, was just a terrific process. I think the administrators understand that we respect the job they do and how important they are as part of the job that Dr. Freeman and Dr. Keene and Mr. Bowden are doing and that we're trying to do. So any others that were on the committee that want to make any observations?
My observation, I agree, Bill, it was collegiate, collaborative. There were no attorneys arguing with each other. There were open dialogue between us and the administrators. And it was, insofar as one could say about these things, it was enjoyable because we respected them, they respected us, and it went very well.
Any other comments?
Can't add anything more. It was a very good process, and I think everybody was satisfied with the outcome.
I'll just add that it happens less and less frequently, but there continue to be moments where I still feel very new and very surprised by what I see going on here. And in both the teacher negotiations and the administrative negotiations, there were moments where I sat back and I was pleased and proud and reminded how fortunate I am to be here to watch a Board of Education and first the teacher group and then the administrative group talk about what the kids need in the district and come to an agreement collaboratively. I have never seen negotiations like that anywhere else. I've never participated in IBB processes, and I want to applaud the board and the teachers and tonight the administrators for what they bring to the table in the school district.
All right, so is there a motion that we approve the proposed agreement?
So move.
Second.
Any other questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, I will be happy then on behalf of the board to sign it, and again, with our thanks to the administrators and last month the teachers, but this was a good process, and fortunately one that did not have to go to arbitration, that there are probably no winners in arbitration. But all right, item 9.2 on the agenda is to receive the 2011
Yes.
2012 strategic school profiles.
Just a year late.
This is a receive item only. Each year, this item gets later and later. We have finally received these back approved, and so tonight we share them with you. Please remember that this is a snapshot that is now a year and a half dated. If you do have any specific questions about the data that you see there, I would encourage you to contact Dr. Keene or myself, and we can certainly respond to any of the information. I will make one note. The SSPs do record us in 11 and 12 as having had full-day kindergarten. That is an error. We did not report that. We went back and checked the information that we provided. It's an error. The state has been made aware, and they are efforting changing that, but they're not sure if it can be changed at this point. We did not provide full-day kindergarten in school year 11-12.
We know. I mean, this, for you, for the new board members, this is really one of the more infuriating parts of the job, in that we get these state reports that are, by the time they're assembled and we can actually look at them and compare them to other districts or whatever, they're already so hopelessly out of date that they're useless. Or if not useless, not very useful, let's put it that way. And you would think that in 2013, they would be able to assemble data in a little more timely way. Whether they can or not, they haven't. So I think what I'd suggest we do is that if you have any, you'd read them over. If you have questions or there's something you want to bring up at a meeting, let me know. We'll put it on the agenda, and we will go from there. But usually by the time we get these things, we're so far past it that it's just not that helpful. So in any event. 9.3 is to discuss committee organization and assignments and liaisons. Do you want to talk first of all about the thought about the finance and building committees?
At the workshop meeting last week, we discussed the concept of running joint finance and facilities committee meetings at the same time, and to form a new committee called an operations committee. I've served on both, as some of us also have, and there's tremendous overlap between the two in terms of bonding and financing of projects, and it just seemed to be efficient to combine them into one meeting, and today we had our first of the combined meetings. We elected Mrs. Renner as chair of this new committee, and it was run very efficiently. We finished early and had a chance to socialize for a bit, so that's a good start. I am very hopeful that this will work just fine. It does require a change in our bylaws, because currently our bylaws do state that there has to be those two committees, and the policy committee will have to look into that and hopefully change it, and hopefully it will work
Yes,
out.
the policy committee will put that on their next
Great.
meeting's agenda.
And like all board committees, it is open to the public, and we meet at 6 p.m. prior to the regularly scheduled televised Board of Ed meeting like tonight. So welcome anybody who would like to come and listen, and I think it will be a productive committee.
Okay. I should just indicate for the record, we did make committee assignments and some committee assignments. and liaisons. I think for the key committees would be the Operations Committee, the Combined Facilities and Finance Committees. That would be Dr. Myers, Mr. Sands, Ms. Renner, Dr. Moore, Ms. Sullivan, and Ms. Dudley. Am I right? I think that's right. And Policy, Mr. Kazin, Ms. Dudley, again, she's retired. She can be everywhere. And Dr. Balistraci. We do have a liaison to the Town Land Acquisition Committee, and Mr. Kazin has agreed to do that. Mr. Sands has agreed to be the liaison to the Town Standing Fields Committee. The Wellness Committee, I think I've got this right, it was Dr. Balistraci, and I think Ms. Sullivan indicated also some interest in that, so I think there's plenty of room at those. I think that the feeling is now that we don't need a permanently staffed Transportation Committee. They don't meet regularly, they don't need to meet regularly. When something comes up, we'll just appoint a subcommittee and do it on an ad hoc basis. Ms. Dudley will be the representative to our RESC, our Regional Education Service Center, LEARN. Then that leaves the two very important liaisons, one to the Guilford High School Building Committee and one to the Standing Building Committee. Both town committees technically, but we have a very large stake in what they do. Is that a fair comment, Dr. Freeman? Dr. Freeman and I went to the last high school building committee meeting. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But I think what makes sense at this point would be to have, rather than permanent liaisons to those committees, have each of us tasked in any one particular month to go to those committee meetings. And I think that's helpful for two reasons. One, or at least two reasons. One is it would be less of a burden on any one individual, but also it would give each of us a better understanding about what it is that they are doing and what their process is. And I think that's very valuable, especially as we confront some of these building-related issues that we heard about at our last workshop meeting, or the joint meeting. So I think what I'd propose is whatever the month is that you did the bill review, if you could do, maybe, I think not that month, but maybe the next month, do the liaison work
That
to
makes
the,
sense.
right, do the liaison, unless you want to have one just horrible month. That would be one way to do it.
No, that's too much.
No horrible months. All right, so the month after you do the building or the bill review, then the next month you would be the liaison, and I know, Dr. Moore, we may have to talk about that in your situation, but we'll figure that out. And if you can't do it, you just trade off with somebody. It's not a big deal. It's not written in stone. So.
And what I'd note, just for consistency's sake, Mr. Bloss, is that Mr. Gurnham attends all of the town standing building committee meetings, and either Mr. Macenti or I or both of us attend all of the high school building committees. So as you cycle through those, please contact one of us, sit with us during the meeting, and we can provide some of that consistency as the board cycles through the process.
Then we did also talk briefly about...
Before
Yes, go
we
ahead.
leave that, there is one other committee, not a committee of the board, but a committee of, concerning technology. And I've been the board representative liaison to that committee. And I'm perfectly happy to continue, but I know there are other people on this board who are interested in technology, and I'd welcome a partner to join me.
Mr.
Gary?
Kazin? Okay.
Yeah.
Please. All right, anybody else? All right.
Very, very interested when I return.
Why
When
don't
you return, yeah.
Well, and I'd also point out that we can make sure that we post those meetings, and so that should any board member be available and interested, you're welcome to join any of those meetings. And we do now have them set. I want to say it's the third Thursday of the month at 3 o'clock in the new professional development room that's been prepared at LEAT, but we can confirm that for the board. And so we would welcome your participation there.
Thank you.
Okay. The school liaisons, also, we did talk about that a little bit this evening. Mr. Kazin and Dr. Myers would be the liaisons to the high school. I would be the liaison to Adams, Ms. Renner to Baldwin, Ms. Dudley to Jones, Mr. Sands to Cox, Dr. Balistraci to Lakes, and Ms. Sullivan to Lee. I think that's right. Everybody, did I miss anybody? Okay. All right, so that's where we are in terms of liaisons, operations, committees, et cetera, et cetera. So then, is there anything else on that? Anybody else have any other comments or thoughts? Okay. 9.4 is to receive for possible action the 2014 Operations and Policy Committee calendars. I guess as a board, we have to approve that.
These are aligned with the Board of Ed meetings.
These
Yep.
continue the practice of what we have done over the last couple of years. So I guess we do have to act on it tonight if it's 2014. All right, so is there a motion relating to those? Does anybody have any? Let's make the motion first. And
So
then-
May 25th, one of the
Second.
dates.
Motion, we approve the calendar?
All right, second.
Second motion.
All right, questions, comments? Looks like the left flank over there seems to have a question.
I know, no, I think it was the workshop calendar that we had at the last meeting. We had a date of March 25th for the workshop, and on the calendar it says Monday, March 25th, and it's actually a Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
So
So basically, the
Come on, one or
operations
the other.
committee is meeting monthly, and the policy committee every other month, is that the?
It's meeting monthly.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. 9.5 is to act on a resolution regarding an update to our 457 deferred pension plan. That was discussed at the Finance Committee meeting, and there are some questions about it. Ms. Renner had some questions about it and would like, and there doesn't seem to be any particular urgency on this, so with the board's permission, we'll just table this for this evening, and we'll put it on when it's ready to be put back on. 9.6 is to receive a 2014-15 school calendar draft. This is just to receive tonight, I assume?
Yes.
Right. And 9.7 is for 15 and 16 draft. Not taking action on it tonight. Is this out, Dr. Freeman, on the website? Are people able to comment on this? Have it
I
accessible?
don't believe it is yet, but after you receive it tonight, we could certainly put that on the website, and then if the board wants to take action at your next meeting, the community will have had time to review this.
Okay.
we have an overview of the changes. I noticed Labor Day, starting after Labor Day on the 15, 16,
School is starting after
16, 17, yes.
If I may speak to both of the calendars together?
Sure.
What we will be looking for approval on is actually the 14-15 calendar. We wanted to show you both school years, however, because we begin to approach an important summer. And so as we went into the 14-15 school year, we made every effort to keep the year tight and to try to have the school year end as early as possible. It is over the summer of 15 that we will be moving out of this building and into the new high school, and there will be important site work that needs to get done. So the idea of trying to maximize the summer of 15 for the building project becomes important and impacts 2 consecutive calendars. This year being the shortest summer that I think any of us had ever experienced, with a very late end to the school year and sort of an early beginning, would have been difficult if we were trying to make that move. So in a couple of ways, we were fortunate because next school year fell out very comfortably. There are some school calendars that are easy to make, and there are some that are really difficult to make work. When we put this calendar together, we tried to, one, meet all the guidelines that a calendar committee some time ago put together here in Guilford. And so there were parent and staff and administrative concerns that were aired, that were collected as part of this committee. Mrs. Bishop has been very gracious in being the keeper of those agreements and works every year to help us draft out the calendar moving forward. So first, we met those commitments. Secondly, we aligned with the regional calendar that is designed through our RESC, and alignment to that regional calendar will become a requirement as we move into next school year. We do it because we're good neighbors and cooperative, but it'll be a requirement next year moving forward.
Requirement by
And
who?
thirdly, it's new legislation that you work with regional calendars to try to save money and save educational expense across the state by having districts collaborate more closely.
So vacations are the same and all that?
For us, the really big impact simply becomes the placement of April vacation. There are some smaller districts that collaborate on professional development. First and last days of school are still, even though the legislation requires it, are still impossible to do because some school districts have 180 student days and others have 185. Some have 5 days of professional development and some have none. And so we work around April vacation, which makes a lot of sense, and it does help reduce busing costs across the state. It helps us in that it aligns for people who may be employees in one district, but live in another with their own children, and we have that going in both directions. We've got teachers who work in Guilford and live in other communities, and we've got community members whose students come to school here and they teach in other communities, and so it really does help. So our calendar fits all those three together and focuses on the early finish. We do that by starting before Labor Day. We do that by front-loading professional development time. And the front-loading of professional development time works for us as well because this year, while we're rolling out our new evaluation process with only a third of the teachers, next year we will be launching it with 100% of the teaching staff, and having those days front-loaded will give the principals the time they need to talk about student learner outcomes and to help the new staff who haven't gone through the process before to really become comfortable with goal writing and with collecting data and examining data and moving forward into the new process. So this is the calendar that we will be asking for approval. It's paired with the following year's calendar only to show that this would be a year that we would most likely be looking to start school after Labor Day. Professional development again becomes front-loaded. High school staff will be moving into a new building and will be needing to learn the operations of a new building. They're going to have a new phone system, new computer system, new AV systems, and so you want to have those days loaded up front for that staff, and obviously the other schools will have work to do as well. There are concerns about this second calendar. So while we're not presenting it as a finished product and we're not asking for approval, we wanted to air it tonight as a draft to show the sort of calendar that we will be looking for moving forward. We will know more about our construction timeline this time next year. Right now we know that we're ahead of schedule, but we'll have better information this time next year. We also, when we aired both of these calendars with the leadership team, there were some interesting creative suggestions about year two that we haven't had time to really explore. So we want to take some time and let those ideas roll around and see if we can look at those. My biggest concern is that this calendar for 15-16 shows us planning on getting out of school on June 20th. That's late, and that's late without any weather, and we haven't had a lot of years without a lot of weather recently. And so this calendar could, in fact, put us in trouble. My worry here would be that if we adopt this calendar and then we have a very difficult winter, we would know that April vacation would be in the sights. We would know that in a very difficult weather season, April vacation would be something that could be truncated. And so if this calendar were ever adopted, it would have to go out with a good, strong PR campaign so that families were careful about committing to April vacation and knew that there was a possibility that that could be truncated. So we wanted to show that to you, but we're asking for more time to be creative with year 15-16. That's going to be an exciting year. That'll be the year that we move into our new high school. We were hoping to have the 14-15 calendar presented and ask for your approval, not tonight, but fairly soon, so that we could begin publishing that. And we will post it to the website first thing in the morning. If there's any changes here tonight, we can make those amendments before making the posting.
Okay. Do you have any questions,
How do
comments?
the conference dates get decided or planned for? I mean, I know where they kind of are, but...
The conference dates are just on hold for now, and then the elementary principals particularly will meet and confirm those, and then we will have those come out a little bit later. Those always come out a little bit later than the rest of the calendar, but we wanted to get the main components locked in place.
So I grew up in Virginia where we always started after Labor Day. So it's always been an adjustment for me to be up here, start 2 days before Labor Day. Can I ask just the people who, I mean, is it traditional, I mean, when they go to the regional calendar, will most of the schools still be starting before Labor Day or after? Or why do they start the 2 days before Labor Day traditionally?
There still isn't clear understanding on what the definition of following a regional calendar means. In my mind, that means that the regional organizations will publish a template calendar, and we will, to the best of our ability, align to that template. That's probably a fairly loose definition of follow the local calendar. I think everyone's going to have
They
different...
still have some flexibility.
Right. Yeah, I think everyone's going to have very different start and stop times. I think it simply became a function of trying to fit everything in and trying to have some chunks of uninterrupted instructional time. What we really look for as we look at the calendar is all the bits and pieces and interruptions that have to be in there because of a holiday or a tradition or an election day, and then we really try to create uninterrupted chunks of instructional time. And so we really look at the months that don't have a lot of color in them. When an educator looks at this calendar, March is the month that we like. There's a month where we don't have any interruptions. We've got 5-day weeks. And so we try to make those happen as best we can. We've been going before Labor Day. I don't remember ever proposing a calendar that came after Labor Day that wasn't connected to a construction project. We only push them out on years that I've been connected to a summer move. I think I remember it growing up, but I don't remember it in this job.
The only other thing that jumps out at me at the 2014-15 is that Good Friday and Easter fall on April break. And I don't know how people feel about that, but I've always found it it's nice to have 1 week where, if you want to get out of town or something, it's tougher to do that if you have, major holiday. So I don't know if that is a big deal to anybody, but is there a possibility of moving that week to the 13th through 17th?
Two things. One, instructionally, we see that as a pickup because we get to crunch those two together. And the next year, we won't be able to combine those two. And we actually had a different April break until the regional calendar came out. So that is the April break that all of the other districts in the region will be following. And for that reason, we adopted that one. I know why it went there, because when you can connect it to those, everybody tries to connect it to those. But we moved it to be part of the regional grouping.
I have a couple of things to bring up. Neither one is new, but over the past month, first of all, on Election Day, I was a bit uncomfortable that schools were not closed. So I'll just put that out there. And then sort of the opposite is Veterans Day, and this has come up in conversation before, but to me, Veterans Day is more meaningful if the children were in school and there was a program on Veterans Day. I don't think that too many kids really participate in Veterans Day activities when they have that day off. So a suggestion might be to consider swapping those two.
I've actually been approached on both of those topics. There were some veterans this year who asked why we don't have school on Veterans Day, which is interesting. I've been in districts where we moved to school on Veterans Day and ended up confronting resistance and having to explain why we thought that was a respectful thing to do. Mm-hmm. And we did receive a petition about Jones being used as a voting site. Oh. It was not about safety or security. It was about the convenience of using... At Jones, we use the gymnasium, which is around the back of the building and not easy to access. If school were not in session, you could use the cafeteria, which would be easier. My concern there is that in any given year, we usually face 2 elections. And so the idea of taking both of those days off, again, it's about that end of the year.
Yeah.
This year, what we did is we had professional development on Veterans Day. So it was a way for us to recognize the holiday and have the day off for the students, but not lose a day because we have to fit our professional development days in. Mm-hmm. So we're always trying to figure out, so I understand the concern. Mm-hmm. We do increase security on days when we have the elections. Wherever possible, we physically separate the voting stations from the rest of the school. We increase police presence. And in schools where it's not possible to physically isolate the voting station, we have a police officer on duty full-time who does not leave the building while students are in session. To address that concern, that is a concern. I worry about dropping 2 days in the calendar. It'll push the end of the school year out by 2 full days if we were to do that. You could think about pairing professional development in one or both of those. Mm-hmm. That would be very hard to do with the referendum because we never know for sure what day the referendum is going to fall on until the town meeting that sets the referendum date.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Thank you for explaining.
But we went round and round that a little bit ourselves.
And, you know, and we did, it hasn't been that long that Jones has been a voting place. You know, Mr. Kazin, you've been, you know, you more than me know this. It was at there isn't a lot of public space north of Route 80, first of all, but it was at the firehouse, which was great space, but the traffic, the parking was bad, and the ingress and egress were very substandard. I think the police chief is really the one that said, look, this just isn't going to work, and he's I think my recollection is that it came from the public safety side of the town and said, look, you got to look at somewhere else, and really Jones is the only other place. Yeah. And there was discussion, I know, one year about of closing the cafeteria on Election Day and just doing box lunches for kids or something. I don't know whether that's a possibility. But we did, and I don't frankly remember what the end of the discussion was. Do you remember that? Was that in your time or not your time? We did talk about that, and it obviously hasn't happened. I don't have a distinct recollection why, but maybe you could check that out a little bit. And
I can look into that conversation.
But anyway, so this is just received tonight, so you know, I'd urge anybody who has questions or comments, just please forward them to Dr. Freeman, and we'll try to do the best we can.
I'll collect any feedback for your next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the rest of the evening, Mrs. Dudley, apparently belongs to you with the various policy issues. Where would you like to start?
Well, non-discrimination is a good place to begin. This non-discrimination regulation has been revised and approved, and then we had to go to the non-discrimination in instruction. Okay? And that's for non-discrimination in instruction. We decided that we would use the shorter form, Mr. Kazin suggested, because it covers discrimination of any kind, and then we don't have to list a whole bunch of things that we will not discriminate in, and it will need revision less likely in the near future, because it seems the legislature keeps adding things on by saying discrimination of any kind. We cover it all. Do you want to go on? Non-discrimination. Do you want to take that one separate? They're not really, that one's totally separate in a way.
Right. So these are all received tonight, so we're not going to have any votes on any of these, but
Okay.
I mean, I guess why don't you go one at a time? If people have any questions or comments, I think do them now rather than...
I think one of the thoughts here was that we do list in many places throughout the policy handbook what, in detail, what, who, and what falls under kind of a non-discrimination. This simply extends all of those details to instruction specifically, and CABE offered a number of options, and one of them was really this very brief explanation that really refers to, in many ways, the discrimination statements we have, non-discrimination statements we have throughout the policy handbook.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else on this? Okay.
Okay, policy 5810. This had not been revised since 1998, when we adopted a big book full of policies, and this one was begging to be reviewed in many ways. And so we spent some time going through research and publishing. We changed the name, and it should just read, it's very short, requests that all services for student volunteers in research projects, special studies, and surveys not part of the regular educational program must have parent and superintendent approval. That's just a little condensation there.
Okay.
This regulation, which is the next number, and the existing regulation was going to be removed. Recommending we don't need it anymore, so that's going. Okay,
And just to kind of clarify that one, 5810 was one of those where the policy had one title and the regulation had another title. And so it was incumbent upon us to look at those and say, are they both necessary, or could we make one? And so the committee is recommending that we can, to make one. We looked at some CADE policies also. So that was one of the reasons that this number, which was on our list to review, came to our attention. So that was, and there's a couple of other duplicates like that, but this was the one. So there will only be a 5810 with no regulation.
Since the policy provides a superintendent, schools is involved in the approval, we're very comfortable in the fact that our superintendent of schools is going to be very familiar with human subjects study and protocol, and does not need a regulation from a Board of Ed to explain to him or her what should be done in that regard.
There is just one thought, a small number, but there are students in the school who are 18 or over in this school. So if we have to obtain consent from parents, it seems to me that we need consent from any adult who is a student at Guilford High School.
That's a good point. I wonder what the number actually is.
I mean, doesn't this really only apply to things that happen during school time?
Well, it shouldn't be happening during instructional time, right?
Yeah, if it's anything that is outside collecting data for the normal instructional purposes, it would have to be brought to our attention, and it'd have to be specific approval. So if it's, you're collecting data because, it relates to learning in the classroom or a program that we're running in school, fine. But if you're doing it because you're working on your doctoral dissertation, even if you're doing it within the school parameters, we need to know about it.
It's not like college, in other words, or medical school or something.
I can't say how many students we have on any given June who would be 18 years old before graduation day. I'd have to go back. I'd have to do a little research to pull that number.
There's one in my household.
Well, there's also, there are also, depending on the project, protocols that require parental consent.
Right.
And youth assent, A-S-S-E-N-T, for kids sometimes as young as 8 or 9. So that would also, I think, be project or research study specific.
Okay,
okay.
right?
The next two also go together. Bylaw 9700, legal services, and the regulation that goes with it. We reviewed what we had, recommended that increasing be eliminated, and some other words we changed. But the board cannot impose regulations upon other professions, lawyers. So some of what was in here was unnecessary.
This was the only bylaw, by the way, in the entire book that had a regulation with it. So that also brought it to our attention, why does a bylaw have a regulation? So we took a good hard look at that and looked at some samples and making this recommendation.
Okay.
And the last two, policy 6311, diplomas for veterans. This has come down from law, and we're just extending. This was the act concerning honorary diplomas. We're extending it to Vietnam veterans. Was recently added, and so we needed to update our own policy to include that. That's basically the difference between the old and the new.
Just out of curiosity, why do we keep adding wars instead of just saying veterans? I mean, whether it's the Gulf War or the Korean War or...
Because the General Assembly of the State of Connecticut has given us the authority to do it for these three
Only.
wars
We
only.
can't do it for...
Exactly.
Okay.
We don't have the ability to just grant high school diplomas because it's a
Unless
state
there's a public
function.
act about
Yeah,
it.
exactly. It's a state function, and so they allow us to grant for what they call the Korean hostilities, which
In
From
the
what people
Vietnam
tell me,
era.
if you were in it, it seemed like a war.
hostilities to
But it was never declared.
No, I know, I understand. And,
interesting.
yeah, yeah, very precise. But in any event, we've done everything we are required to do and everything we can do. My guess is that in 10 or 20 years, if you're still on the board, you'll be voting to allow diplomas for Iraq war veterans and Afghanistan. Okay, well, good. Any other comments on any of these proposals? We will put
So
them on.
these are just to receive, so you can review them, and we'll vote on them next month.
Okay. Unfinished business, committee reports, policy committee, I would dare say you don't have
No.
anything else to report. Operations committee, anything else to report, Ms. Renner?
I think we covered it.
Okay. High school building committee, I did go last month, and I think the only news, everything is more or less either on track or even ahead of schedule. They've been very lucky with the weather, obviously, and so things are proceeding apace. They did, I believe, vote to do an initial plan for the Black Box Theater to try to get better cost numbers. So they, I don't think are committing to anything permanently, but they accept to get better data. That's what the commitment is.
Schematic design only the first smallest step. They didn't even go all the way to detailed design drawings, just schematic designs for now, and we'll make the next decision when it needs to be made.
But as late as possible. I think they've actually got a good approach to it, that they're trying to see if anything unanticipated happens out there, and then that leaves maybe in a different position to make the decision going down the road. And they did make it clear that they do want our input into the process and do want our thoughts about what the appropriate next steps would be when they get better data. Town committee liaisons, anybody have anything? Okay. Public questions? Anybody have any other questions, comments? All right. New business, which there really isn't supposed to be any of under FOI.
Didn't we remove?
I'm sorry?
I thought we removed that.
No.
It's in the bylaw. We have to reorganize, as long as we're working on committee organization, maybe we can work on agenda organization.
We removed something.
Yeah, we really can't, you can add agenda items, but it's not, I don't think it's a good idea, because you're not really giving the public notice of it unless there's something really urgent. Sometimes we do, but in any event. Motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Some about this in summertime.